for joining us this morning. I'm really excited to be here. It's the first day of special session. We've got some great. It's a great day for Oklahomans that we're going to be talking about tax cuts and lower government, smaller government. And I've got the Speaker of the House, Charles McCall, with me. Grover Norquist, who you're going to hear from in a second, is from Americans for Tax Reform, and he is a leader, worked in the Reagan administration, been all over the country, and is a tax expert. So I'm really excited, Grover, for you to be here. Thank you so much. And we've got the GOP chairman, Nathan Dahm, who's also a senator here. And so thank you so much for being here, Senator. We've got Senator Jett. Thank you. You snuck in on me. And we've got the treasurer of the great state of Oklahoma, Todd Russ, with us that we'll address in a second. But I called this special session for three things. Number one is budget transparency. Let's make sure the budget is more transparent. We have more time to look at it. We have more time for House and Senate members to opine on that. And I've just asked for 72 hours to look over the budget. I've asked for tax cuts, and I've asked for tax fairness. And so we're welcome to talk about any of those things today. Getting these things over the finish line are going to be wonderful for all 4 million Oklahomans to slow the growth of government. And I've got a couple of posters here that I wanted to share with you. So there's been some confusion. I think people have been spinning things saying, "Hey, Governor, how are we gonna pay for core services?" Let me be very clear with Oklahomans. I would never advocate to cut revenue below reoccurring expenses. So we have to invest in education and roads and bridges and healthcare. We will absolutely pay for core services. So right here is our reoccurring expenses, $9.8 billion. My question for the legislature and for us to ask ourselves, how big should government be? When we have excess revenue, like we did last year at $1.2 billion, what do we do with that excess? Do we give some of that back to the taxpayer? After all, it's the taxpayer's money. Do we keep raising the expense level? If you keep raising expenses every year, you're going to be in a terrible situation in a few years. So a 1/4 point tax cut is $95 million, according to the Tax Commission, this next year. And then it's $245 million or $240 million the following year. We can absolutely do it when we have these type of surpluses. After all, we have a $5.4 billion savings account. The other thing you could do is you could save this money. Well, eventually Oklahomans are going to say, "Hey, Speaker, Governor, how much money do you need in savings? You already have the record savings account." So it's time to slow the growth of government and give that back to the taxpayers. The next chart I wanted to share with you is just some history. Okay, this one is unbelievable. Okay, back in 2010, I don't know if you guys can see this. Back in 2010, Oklahomans had 3.76 million people. Okay, 3.76 million people, and we were serving those people with a budget of $6.6 billion. Okay, 13 years later, Oklahoma has been growing. Matter of fact, you hear me talk about it a lot. The last couple of years, we've been top 10 in net migration, people moving to our state. But over this 13-year period, we have grown about 8%, okay? 8% population. At the same time, our appropriation budget has gone from $6.6 billion to last year, it was almost $13 billion. So population, we're serving 8% more people in the state of Oklahoma, and yet our budget has gone up right at 100%, okay? This is unsustainable, okay? This is why I refused to sign the budget last year, is we cannot keep spending these types of money. We have to slow the growth of government. I'm going to let Norquist talk a little bit about the different states, but we have some state populations up here that shows kind of our competition and who we compete against. We have to compete from an economy standpoint against all these other states. These states are moving to a zero income tax. They are all moving and lowering their rate. People are fleeing from high tax states to low tax states. We have to compete against Texas every single day, and they have zero income tax. I'll let Grover talk more about that. But the bottom line is, we have already started over the last 20 years on a path to zero. What I mean by that is we have started back in the early 2000s, our actual tax rate was 7%. Now we're at 4.75. This on the bottom is our revenue growth, okay? If you look back in 2001, taxes went up 1/4 point and they peaked out at 7%. If you notice, revenue actually went down. And then if you see the revenue, the tax cuts happening, revenue is actually increasing. We believe that when you lower taxes, you're expanding the tax base. The economy is being fueled. More businesses move, more people hire, more jobs are here. We're not losing people to lower tax states. It is great for everyone. And I think this proves the point. We're at 4.75, and look at our revenue growth from where we started at a 7% rate in the early 2000s. So again, big picture here is we want to slow the growth of government. This is unsustainable, and we want to cut taxes, give that money back to the taxpayer. Inflation is hurting every single Oklahomans. We can afford it. I'm not advocating that we would ever cut taxes below recurring expenses, or put core services ever in jeopardy. So I just want to be very, very clear on